the biggest fight you could make right now in lightweight, especially considering their styles, right? Like Islam, he's kind of the reincarnation of Khabib almost, even though Khabib's still alive. But similar game plan plus the striking. He seems so dominant when it gets to the ground, and this is kind of like almost like that Tony Ferguson versus Khabib fight that we never got to see. Right, like one's a submission specialist. We're wondering how does he do on the ground against someone so dominant in the top position like Islam. Who do you got in this one?
Like you said, I think this is even like better version of Khabib and better version of Tony Ferguson. If you go really and look and break their games, they're like much more advanced version of two guys that we were talking previously. So
I
I was
agree.
really like watching Islam, and I think people underrate his striking so much. He's such a good counter striker. He's so patient. He's not even rushing for a takedown like Khabib.
Yeah.
He's, I think, much more complete fighter, honestly. So now again, like what Khabib made a champion that he is like again head, and pushing through and going. It's a question again. I think Islam probably took a lot of things from Khabib, and built that mentality. But again, like you cannot replicate the person. I think through the technical side and everything, I think Islam is much better than Khabib. Honestly, it's just like a question: can he rise to that level of of the not just the fame, just the having that mindset? Uh, Talking about mindsets, I think like one of the maybe the most interesting stories in UFC, and I think the only problem why Charles Oliveira is not bigger star than he is, it's like I don't know, does he even speak English or not? I never heard him. You know,
No, he doesn't. If he does, it's not that much because he does use a translator.
Yeah, so like we have a guy who is like living legend. I don't know like how much like he has 3 fights of the night, 12 performances of the night, 3 submissions of the night. That's saying how far he goes. Like he goes to the era of submissions of the night.
Yep.
From what age he's like from 2014, I think in UFC. No, from 2000, sorry, I'm going back 2010. So he's 12 years in UFC, you
Hmm.
know, and he just like, he had ups and downs, and now he built himself to 11 straight fight wins. Like that's saying something, especially if you look his last 2 fights against Poirier, even 3 fights, Chandler and Gaethje. It's crazy what he did. Like, and I think he's even more using his head because he's the only one who managed to really like deal with Gage's low kicks. Every time he was like lifting the leg up, checking, or even Gage was missing with that, and even though he was hurt twice, 2 times, he managed to go to his back, recuperate, go, put the pressure, and destroy him. So I think he will find a really good game plan for Islam. Only I think like the craziness and the pace that he likes to bring, I'm afraid that Islam maybe can catch him with some counter, because I think a lot of people underestimate his striking game. And if you go back how he knocked out Gleison Tibau, I think with one strike, because he went like and he was just like counter him and put him to the and took him out. So that's something that we have to think about it. I don't see honestly this fight going to the distance um,
Wow.
because of the pace. Like if Oliveira wants to win and really expose Islam, he has to put the pace. And in that pace, I just see like one or other person will get a finish. Depends like who managed to break the will of the other person. And honestly, I think Charles has more tools to win. and I'm just gonna go with him. I just like I have some feeling that he will expose Islam, and if he doesn't get caught by one of the counters, I think that's gonna be his night.
Yeah, and like you said, they underestimate Islam's striking, but I mean Charles Oliveira, he's gotten all these finishes and fight of the nights, performance of the nights, uh, for a reason because he can do it all. You know, he can strike, but he can do it with the elbows, the knees, and the kicks and the punches. And you mentioned a little bit before, like he's been in the UFC for 12 years. Islam, he's been fighting for 12 years. Fun fact, they actually have the same date, August 1st, 2010. That's the first pro fight of Islam, and that's the first UFC fight of Charles Oliveira. So Oliveira's been in the UFC for as long as Islam's been fighting, which is pretty crazy. Like he's had a long career. Um, as far as like finding a game plan to beat Islam, right? Because we've seen from him and Khabib, right? If they want to take you down, they're going to take you down, and it's probably going to be against the cage. I think it's interesting from Oliveira that he likes leg locks. You know, he's got a few leg locks finish on his career. I wonder if he could find just enough space to invert, get to a leg, and just to off balance, or maybe even finish him from there. Right? Easier said than done, but it's something that we haven't seen a lot of people even try against Islam or Khabib. And I know like you like to invert against a little pressure and get some leg locks of your own. So what do you think about that game plan? Could we see that?
Yeah, I think that's maybe good thing to try. Like, and from there, like, he can expose the back. Uh,
Right.
so it's something for sure that we can see. I wouldn't be surprised. And especially the style of jiu-jitsu or wrestling jiu-jitsu or however you want to call it that they have really heavy pressure. And
Hmm.
it's possible if he managed to off balance him a little bit and just like go underneath just to create that space, even if he doesn't get the leg lock, just to create the space and from there to try to expose the back. I can see that for sure. But also, like, um talking about the clinch, Islam has really good clinch too, and that's something like when I think I pay the most attention to this fight because it's really intriguing. I don't think that we have lately somebody on that level that you don't know which way to go. But like minus 190 plus 160 plus, like I said, that that wave that Charles has, like, especially like also mental state, that he lost his title from because half pound, and probably
Hmm.
the scale was bad, and he again managed to put everything behind him and go and win in like spectacular fashion, So I think like he's just like, and I think I heard even that he said that he is like touched by God or something like that. Again, talking about the mindset, like, like he really thinks that if he really thinks that, maybe that's true, at least for him, So I think he's walking through that aura now. Only thing again, usually with people coming from the poor, when the money comes, like usually they just like change the track, like what happened to
Hmm.
Connor, what happened to many other fighters, Uh, that's like for me was like questionable with Charles, but I think he's still not in that stage. I think he's still hungry, and I think he will get a W this Saturday night.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I wonder where his head is at, and I think we've seen him overcome those things with a strong mental attitude. But like you mentioned, when the money comes, sometimes that changes your attitude. And I don't know if Oliveira has said it this week, that recently, but he has said when this fight started getting made that he didn't want to fight Islam. He thought it was a hard matchup, and he would rather have a big money fight against Conor McGregor. So if he's still feeling that way, I don't think that's the right mindset. But we'll see. Like, because he had reasons to maybe give up in the fights or before the fights, and with the streak he's on now, like shit, maybe he is touched by God, right? So he's finding a way through it anyway. Good news is probably win or lose if Oliveira wants that fight with McGregor. It's not like McGregor is getting a title shot anytime soon, right? Like he could very well fight the loser of this fight as well.
Depends who is a loser. If it's Charles, maybe yes. If it's Islam, maybe not. I don't think he wants to deal again with wrestling. But again, that will be a really interesting matchup. Talking about like Khabib, like how to say Khabib prodigy against McGregor. Like maybe like a second. They want to go to the second loss through all that drama again. Again, Khabib will be in his corner. So it's gonna be really interesting. I think, especially for the new age fans. Like people like that drama. So that can be even bigger matchup than with Charles. So who knows what future brings, but like that's something that it's probably going to be interesting to UFC at least to think about it.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I think anytime they could get Connor back, they're happy to make that fight.
yeah, so on this one we got both the guy touched by God or Charles Oliveira with plus 160. That's our pick for this Saturday.